G7 leaders have wrapped up 3 days of talks with a strong commitment to Ukraine. Ukrainian President Vlodomy Zelenskyy flew in to attend the G7 summit in Hiroshima in Japan as leaders grappled with how to end the conflict as soon as possible. SABC News correspondent Gilbert has more for us.
Very successful G summit held here by the host country, Japan. It was centered around the key themes of nuclear non-proliferation and disarmament like Tokyo had designed it to be, but also hitting those key pillars of global significance at the moment, starting on day one right out of the gate with the war on Ukraine, announcements of increased sanctions on Russia as the G7 really looks to pull back the resources it has available to continue the war, targeting its diamond trade, its revenue from oil and mineral exports, and looking to hunt out those who are assisting Russia to continue the war. But then, as Vlodomy Zelenskyy announced he was coming to Japan and arrived here, the conversation also switched to those pushing factors to arm Ukraine further with aid, but also with ammunition, deals from the US and other countries with hundreds of millions of dollars going forward to try and arm Ukraine to end the war as soon as possible and push back Russia. There was also significant discussion about how to deal with China in the coming months. A 9-point plan in the joint statement which addresses engagement, cooperation, but also calls out China's economic coercion, human rights issues, and military assertiveness around the Taiwan Strait. That line that the G7 has settled on, that it opposes any unilateral action to change the status quo by force. The key to all this is outreach to the global south, countries like India and Brazil who were present at this G7 summit, to push pressure on Russia, added pressure, global pressure on Russia to end the war in Ukraine. These countries still remain neutral, and also to look to them to diversify supply lines away from China, reduce economic dependence on Beijing, and finally to invest in these countries, to develop their infrastructure so they can become global players in the sphere of G7 influence. Whether this roadmap works or not is yet to be seen. A lot will be discovered at the G20 summit happening in India in September. Gilbert for SABC News in Tokyo.